Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com. Now, I don't normally talk about videos, actually, because I'm not a visual kind of person. I don't respond to them terribly well, but every so often something comes along that I really think that I should describe and promote and get behind, and it's this. The Charles Ives America video, which is part of a series produced by cultural commentator Joseph Horowitz, who's the author of Understanding Toscanini and other provocative books about the American classical music scene. Now, Dvorak's Prophecy is a book that he wrote, which actually, let me see if I have the whole title of it here, because it's a very good book, by the way. I read it. It's fascinating. It's essentially about how American classical music went wrong, which is a topic we all love to talk about, isn't it? I mean, really. Dvorak's Prophecy, a new narrative for American classical music. The book was Dvorak's Prophecy and the Vexed Fate of Black Classical Music. That was specifically what the book was about. And it was a very thoughtful essay on why classical music stayed white, elitist, European. You want to sort of go there. You know the list, you know the story, and you know what happened. And we know, since we've been discovering all these other works by African American composers, that there's quite a repertoire out there of excellent stuff that's worth exploring. And also how the very definition of classical music has prejudged us, conditioned us, I can't get the word out, conditioned us to treat a lot of the best in American music which should become classical, as something outside, something foreign to the body of classical music more generally, which is a terrible, terrible shame. And that includes, aside from African American classical music, it includes film music, for example, or music based on other cultural influences, such as, the Eastern influence of Lou Harrison and people like that, because there's just so much great music out there. What matters, or what should matter in something being classical, as I've said so many times, is whether it's great music or not what style it's in. That's a whole different issue. Anyway, Dvorak's Prophecy is part of a series of 6 videos, or 5 videos. I think there are 6 of them here. Let me just tell you what the other ones are, and then we'll get to this one. The first one is Dvorak, the New World Symphony, and his view that a Native American school of music would be based on what he considered to be the indigenous music of African Americans and Native Americans, that is, Black people and Indians. You want to be colloquial about it. And Dvorak, of course, was right, as he so often should have been, but it didn't work out that way. And it's a very interesting exploration of the New World Symphony and what it meant, and what Dvorak was trying to say in writing that work. And then we've got Charles Ives America. That's this one, the one we're going to be talking about. Then The Souls of Black Folk and the Vexed Fate of Black Classical Music, or Vexed Fate, if you want to say it that way. Aaron Copland, American Populist. This is what number 5 is really cool. Beyond Psycho, the musical genius of Bernard Herrmann. I mean, for all you film music people out there, you really ought to see that. It's very, very interesting. And then Lou Harrison and Cultural Fusion, which is also very, very, very interesting. And along the way, Joe Horowitz takes on some really fascinating topics, including cultural appropriation and the whole woke thing, and well, we get up to a little bit of this in talking about this video. And he's worked also in the visuals, which are quite lovely in this movie, with Peter Bogdanoff. Really, really quality stuff. And he has fantastic people being interviewed. Where are they? The interviewees. Let's see, J. Peter Burkholder, these music historians, Horowitz himself, William Sharp, the baritone, James Sinclair, the conductor, and music historian Judith Tick. They're all here to talk about Ives. And and you've got performances by William Sharp and Stephen Mayer and Paul Sanchez and James Sinclair and Kenneth Schermerhorn. And we get to hear a whole raft of Charles Ives songs, some more fun ones. the circus band and memories and Feld Einsamkeit and things like that. And we also get the Housatonic at Stockbridge, and both the vocal and the orchestral arrangements from Three Places in New England, the St. Gaudens, the first movement of Three Places in New England, the Second Symphony, a little bit of the First Symphony, they don't gild the lily. One of the nice things about this film, I think, that really is so wonderful, is that it does not emphasize Ives' radicalism and difficulty. It just plays the music and describes how that music is reflective of who Ives was and his view of America and what he was trying to do in writing some of these very complex and difficult works. You do the Alcotts from the Concord Sonata. Okay, it's the tamest part of the Concord Sonata. But, I get it. I get what they're trying to do here. They're trying to just take the music on its own terms, listen to it, and let it speak to you. And I think that's a very smart approach. You don't have to emphasize just how gnarly he was or how experimental. People who become interested in Ives the composer and who fall in love with his output, as I have, for example, will naturally come to understand and absorb some of his crazier inspirations. Although it would have been nice if they'd done like the 4th of July. That could have been like quite the thing. And talked about the Fourth Symphony a little bit. I mean, we all have our preferences, right? But I have to say, and I've said this so many times here, but I just don't mind repeating myself. There's so much here that struck a chord with me personally, and I don't know how other people will react because, I mean, I was born in Danbury. My father was from Danbury. My grandfather had a store on Main Street in Danbury. He went to prep school in New Haven at Hopkins Grammar. I went to prep school in New Haven at Hopkins Grammar. He wrote the Housatonic at Stockbridge. I grew up in Milford, Connecticut, on the shores of the Housatonic River. And then he went to Yale. I got into Yale. I didn't go there for grad school, but I could have. And I spent my undergraduate years, let's put it that way, my high school years, hanging out at the music school on Wall Street at Yale. Yale was the sort of the nucleus of the scholarly community in New Haven, and Hopkins Grammar was invented as a prep school to get into Yale. So Ives was one of our more famous graduates, and we had these Ives festivals and things. I mean, all of that stuff. And so his music spoke to me immediately, just out of my own personal experience. And, when you're first getting into classical music is a difficult thing, right? It's exactly what they're talking about here, the European influence and the elitism and all of that stuff. And so if there's a pathway in that is personal to you, you feel close to, it's a wonderful thing. But of course, Ives, as Horowitz points out here, has never really been accepted. I mean, this is an Ives year, right? And thank God Sony is putting out the big 22-disc Ives commemorative edition and all that. But Ives is more celebrated in Europe than he is in the United States. And that's a crime, because the United States has always shat on its own native products. And the story of that shatology is the story of this series of videos. Now, this particular video, like I said, is very beautiful. It traces Ives' life from Danbury through his, success as an insurance salesman and his, rejection throughout his lifetime, and then finally his acceptance at the end of his life, his glimmers of acceptance. And he has been accepted. He's just not played, which is really sort of, if you're accepted but not played, what good is it? You're sort of back where you started, aren't you? I mean, it's really a shame. It's really a shame. And they're very, very smart and, I think, beautiful descriptions of some of his greatest pieces. The Housatonic at Stockbridge, particularly the St. Gaudens. Horowitz talks about Ives, his egalitarian impulses, his celebration of freedom of the 1st Black Regiment that fought in the Civil War. That's, described in the monument by St. Gaudens in Boston. His grandparents were abolitionists, for example. The piece does get a little bit with Judith Tick, I believe, who's a very, very smart commentator, I think, and was interesting to listen to. But, she talks about things like his attitude toward gender. It's like, for me, that's too much information because I don't care. But I understand that that if you want to make the case that Ives should be more central figure in our musical life today, unfortunately, performing arts organizations do care about all of those politically correct things, and so they have to be addressed, and so they are addressed here very sensitively, I think. But it's a wonderful video. It's really just first class. I mean, to get to know who Ives was and what he thought about and why he should be central to America's vision of itself in classical music form, why he was a great composer, something about which I've had my issues too, frankly, because I think a lot of his forms are the same. You get like a quiet, misty beginning with dissonant string textures, at least in orchestral works. And then, there's like this big raucous climax in the middle, and then it goes back to what it was doing, and that's it. So he can be kind of similar. He sort of worked the same things over again, maybe to excess. There's all kinds of criticisms you could level at him musically, from a musical point of view. And I think that this video really very nicely balances the man and the music. Because ordinarily biography is kind of irrelevant to me. I don't care. I just want to hear the music. But this is one of those cases where you really do hear the man in the music. And so who the man was is very helpful, I think, in getting to know the music. And I think this video achieves that extremely well, with great sensitivity, and it's 84 minutes long, and it went by like a breeze. It really did. So congratulations to everyone who went and put this together. And as I said, this whole series is worth watching. It really is. If more people watched it, maybe it would make a difference. I mean, that's kind of a forlorn hope, I suppose, because the classical music military-industrial complex of this country is nothing if not monolithic and ossified, and it ain't going anywhere, which is a terrible shame, because as we know from recordings, which are a whole nother world, there's just an amazing assortment of American and other music, which ought to be part of the classical canon, and which I think, in that respect, we can make a difference by keeping our ears open and by keeping on listening. So thank you so much for joining me, friends. Take care.